Well, they hadn't blown anything up yet, admittedly because they hadn't managed to make anything even close to ready for testing. So they had packed up the 3 things that were sort of ready to show off. Dakota wasn't entirely pleased that Tink hadn't waited until they had proper prototypes ready, not to mention they weren't here to play at being inventors. It wasn't hard to argue it was good for their schedule though. They hadn't expected to have this meeting for days or possibly weeks. It hadn't been much more than 24 hours, yet they now found themselves standing outside a very impressive looking building. It was very tall, and had all kinds of strange things cluttering its exterior. There were windmills of different kinds, weather vanes, cranes, hoists, and a fair few things Sapphire had no clue what were. Sapphire had left her bow at Tink's workshop, as it might provoke some questions around here. It also begged the question, if this is where the engineering guild was located, why did Tink seem to live in his own workshop, a fair distance away? "Oh, this is going to be marvellous. Come along now," the clearly excited Tink went, as he approached the door guards. "Hello, my fine fellow. I'm here for an appointment with Craftmaster Jakalev." My, got another brilliant idea, have you?" One of the guards responded, slightly sarcastically. It didn't seem to face Tink, though, that was for sure. "No, 3, he replied triumphantly, "and he is gonna love them." "Well, go on in. I'll escort you since you're bringing friends today." The guard turned to look at the trio, clearly slightly surprised, as he gave them each a once-over, eyes lingering in certain places. "Where did you find those beauties?" he asked, as he turned to open the door. "They found me, in fact," Tink replied, completely unfazed by the guard's attitude, as he slipped in the door. The inside was decently decorated and definitely well kept. It was a rather stark contrast to Tink's cluttered-up workshop with its nice corridors and clean floors. Sapphire peeked in the few open doors they passed, which seemed to lead to offices or something of the like. There were certainly both parchment and tables in there. "So, how's it going, Lady Junior?" the guard questioned, the 2 of them bringing up the rear. "Oh, you know, the usual, until those 3 showed up." "Am I allowed to know what it is our new Huntress friends have come up with?" "Oh, they aren't the designers, they are messengers, and unfortunately no, not yet at least." "Darn it. I'm guessing it's quite something to get old Tink to stop chasing his own crazy ideas." "Oh, I'm sure you would like to know. Also, sorry Tom, we definitely found a crazy one," Sapphire thought to herself, sending the mental apology to Tom. They had arrived at a nice set of double doors. 2 guards stood here as well. Well, whoever this guy is, he's important, that's for sure, Sapphire thought, as the guards swung open the doors, following them inside. Inside was a very nice room with large glass windows on the far wall. Looking around, there was shelving all around, most of it filled with models of different kinds. There were model buildings, wagons, siege engines, and many other odd things that Sapphire had no clue what were. In front of them, at a very large desk, a male dragonette of about Nanook's age was sitting. He has spectacles, Sapphire thought to herself. She knew those cost a small fortune, and she hadn't ever seen someone use them before. Usually you would get a healer to fix any kind of eye problems. "So, Tink, what did you come up with this time?" "Oh, greetings, Craftmaster. First off, on the insistence of my companions, I must have you sign this before we continue. Your guards too if they are to stay." The old dragonette, who Sapphire assumed must be Craftmaster Jakalev, tilted his head downwards a little to peer over the top of his spectacles, sighing slightly. "Ring it here, and yes, they are staying. You may go, Werner." Tink handed over a copy of the non-disclosure agreement. The guard who had escorted them, leaving the way they came. The 2 other guards moved up to the desk. "I see. Quite unlike you to not want the world to know what you have been working on," Jakalev replied, signing the document, the 2 guards doing the same. "So, what you got?" Tink gestured for them to bring forth the things, first presenting the drawings Tink had copied down and then the prototypes. It took a bit to explain what it all did. Jakalev didn't say anything other than ask questions here and there. "So, it would not make your hand dirty when using it?" "Oh, gods no. This is just the core. I wrapped it up in a bit of leather for the time being, but it should just be wood. It would revolutionize design work, not to mention save a lot of parchment in the drawing departments. It's cheap too, and can be carried wherever you go. Excellent for note-taking or possibly map work. Imagine not having to carry ink with you, or relying on charcoal and chalk." "I'll grant you it's rather brilliant, but can you make it?" "Certainly, it shouldn't be hard to do. It's just clay, that ghastly grey stuff, and cheap wood." "Very well. What of this self-lighting lamp? Why not just carry a flint and steel?" Oh, we want to make it smaller so it can fit in your pocket, and you can carry it at all times. It would become your flint and steel. Isn't it brilliant? Tink was clearly barely restraining himself. Jackalope, though, was a lot more calm and thoughtful. Agreed, but what of prices? This looks to be a rather complicated piece of kit. We talked about perhaps making the first ones more like jewellery. You know, a status symbol for the rich. That could work. I certainly want one if you can make it nice and clean. It would make lighting the pipe so much easier. The lamp might be easier to make for general use. Excellent. So would you agree to produce these under license? Dakota went, cutting to the bone of why they were here. If Tink here can come up with some proper designs for a finalized product, I don't see why not. Except for the fact that the most complicated little things we make are locks. We will need some more jewelers too. I'll see what I can do about that. What sort of licensing are we talking about? Quarter a sales price, Dakota answered calmly. Sapphire had been working that out. If a golden lighter ended up costing, say, 20 gold, they would be getting 5. That meant that if most of the people in the council bought one, they would make hundreds of gold. From a drawing. I can see why Tom was so damn well paid back home, and that's just the lighter, Sapphire thought. 1/5, Jackalope retorted, leaning back in his chair. Not happening. Quarter on everything. Those are our terms as per the contract we brought. Remember, we're just the messengers. Then I want exclusive rights for no less than 5 years, with a clause for renegotiating the contract once it expires at my discretion. That sounded like rights forever to Sapphire. With a 25-year maximum, only extendable upon agreement of both parties, Dakota replied, seemingly very pleased. Oh, and before you consider breaking our agreement, should this venture prove profitable for both sides, which I'm sure it will be, these will not be the last inventions you can expect from us. Jackalope looked at Dakota quizzically at that, seemingly trying to figure out what exactly he was dealing with here. Done. Tink, get yourself in gear. I want those things ready yesterday. We need to know if they could do any harm before we send them for approval. Sir, yes, sir, Tink replied, beaming with pride. Approval? Sapphire questioned. That was a new one to her. Yes, of course, any such radical invention must be improved. We can't have some craftsman who knows nothing of how to handle arcane inscriptions trying to sell them to the wider public. That would be disastrous. I can only imagine the harm done to our reputation if we started selling items that turn your hand black or grey. How long would that take? Dakota questioned. Normally, that would take weeks, perhaps even months. Luckily, I might be able to help speed that process up a bit. Not to mention, there is hardly anything dangerous here. There isn't even a hint of magic, in fact. It should be no problem. No, don't worry. You're safe here, I promise, Lothar went, as he rocked his little sister back and forth gently. The baby still hadn't stopped crying yet. Unkai had checked her over, finding nothing wrong, incredibly. Tom guessed what had just happened wasn't a pleasant experience in the least. They moved the 4-year-old girl over to try with her. Celestine requested a minute before they continued. This was clearly not easy on her. Lothar moved away with the baby, going over to the other kiss to stay clear of what was about to happen. Tom repeated the cut, drawing fresh blood in the same manner as before. As with little baby Gennaro, when the blood hit Vibexia's mouth, it seemed to burn through, Celestine's breathing growing laboured as she strained greatly, the bright white light pouring forth from the young girl as she too let out an ear-piercing scream. Tom stood back this time as she thrashed about on the ground. It was horrible. Just like with Gennaro, the light began to fade and eventually cut out. Then there was silence. Jackalope leaned down to jostle the kid to no effect. Gennaro had been screaming and crying right off the bat. Tom, she's not breathing, Jackalope went, looking at him with a horrified expression. Tom turned to look at Celestine, who was face down in the grass. He quickly moved her head so he could hold her hand in front of her nostril. Well, she's still breathing. Unkai, get over here, he replied, slightly relieved. He could guess at what the punishment was for killing a unicorn after all. I think she fainted, he went as Unkai arrived, sprinting over. Does that mean... Jackalope trailed off, looking down at the girl, the spark of hope in her eyes fading. Tom didn't want to say it, but he knew. She was dead. Very dead by now, in fact. He didn't know how long it had been. At least an hour, though, that was for sure. Short of some miracle magic, there was nothing to be done now. He had believed this was all going to be fine. Why wasn't it fine? He didn't even know what god to curse for this. The old man from back home could hardly be held responsible, but why? Why give them hope? Twice even. Just to snatch it away like that. Most of all, Tom just wanted to chuck his helmet for distance right now, or go punch a tree. This wasn't fair. It was the exact goddamn opposite of fair.
Unkai, do you think she could, later?
Jackie tried, looking to Unkai. I know jack shit about unicorns other than do as they say and be polite. His tone was hard, though. There was clearly hurt in there. He would have expected it to work too, Tom guessed. Why wouldn't he have? Right, Tom replied somberly. Not quite sure what else to say right now. I'll grab a blanket, he continued, getting up. Jackalope held out an arm to stop him for a second.
Tom, you're sure you can't,
she tried, clearly putting on a forced, hopeful smile. We couldn't save her now, even if she was in a hospital bed in my home's capital. I'm sorry, Tom replied, looking down. And I'm not even a doctor, healer, whatever. I can't help her. Jackalope's smile faded as she looked back to the girl. Tom, for one, couldn't stand to look at the girl anymore right now, so he walked away. Jarex had laid down and curled up into a half-moon shape, with Zarko and the rest of the kids within the half-moon. Tom made his way over towards Zarko, who was sitting with the twins. He almost felt sorry for Zarko, as she was trying her best to comfort them. They weren't stupid. They knew they had just lost a sister, for the second time today. The twins were damn near shaking with fear, as they looked around despite Zarko's efforts. Lothar was sitting with the crying Gennaro. Revo was lying on his back, head turned, to stare at his dead sister. Tom couldn't even imagine what it must have felt like down there, not knowing how long it had been. He hadn't seen any food either. They might have eaten it all, of course, but there was a good chance they were starving too. Tom sat down between River and Sarko, gesturing for Lothar to come over. He took his backpack off to get some rations out. Sugar probably wasn't the right thing right now, but he did have a rather large bag of trail mix of the local variety, and they could use all the distractions they could get right now. You hungry? He tried, holding out a handful for the twins. It took a bit before one of them reached out a hand to gingerly take some of it, not saying a word. No need to be shy, it's yours. Would you mind, Zarko? Of course, she replied, holding out her hand. Tom giving her the handful of trail mix to let her feed the two of them. How's he doing? Tom said, looking at Revo, who was lying on his back. Unkai said his lungs are dirty, but he'll be fine. Somebody was brave protecting your little sister, eh? Tom tried in his most encouraging voice. The boy turned to look at him, giving a meek smile, which quickly vanished as he looked back to where Jackalope was sitting. Tom could hear her sobbing from here. Lothar, do me a favour and hand this out, would you? Take as much as you want, Tom went, giving the young man the bag and getting back up again. She's not coming back, is she? Revo questioned, clearly on the verge of another breakdown. I'm sorry, but no, I don't think so. Tom could feel the air vibrate with a growl that came from Jarex, the kids ducking for cover on instinct. Welcome to war, Jarex. I hope you like it, Tom went, as he walked over to him to retrieve a blanket from his pack. The growl almost turned out a whimper at that. Maybe that was too rough. Jarex had done extremely well thus far. He needed to learn, though, and he would hopefully never get a better lesson than this. But she's dead, Tom. Why didn't she make it? Jarex protested, clearly very distraught. Yeah, okay. That was too rough. This wasn't his fault, after all. Shh, big guy. You did all you could. And we would never have found them without you. Hell, we wouldn't even have made it here without you. And we didn't lose a kid, okay? Tom went, waiting until Jarex finally looked at him. We saved 5. You helped save 5 kids. And you should be damn proud. But I wanted to save 6. We all did. But that's another fact of war, Jarex. You don't always win. Tom grabbed a blanket from one of the bags low slung on Jarex's harness, giving him a pat on the side. And there is a big difference between losing a fight and losing a war. It would seem Jarex got what Tom was talking about, his head swerving around to look at Tom. We were told that if we find the enemy, we are to return to the cube. We haven't found them yet, Tom replied in as hard a tone as he could muster right now. He mostly just wanted to scream for vengeance. That wouldn't do, though. Not right now, at least. Tom moved over to the sobbing Jackalope, wrapping the kid up in the blanket before sitting down with her and giving her as much of a hug as he could manage. They die for this, she finally stared out. What do you say we see about making that happen? Come over here, we have something to discuss, he went, releasing her. She didn't need to be told twice, shooting to her feet and turning to flank Tom as they walked over. Zarko, it was 4 hours to Deriva, right? Yes, but it will be night by then. And what about the kids? We'll leave them here with Unkai and Celestine. We will give us some time to wake up. I don't want to get there before nightfall anyway. Are we sure we are dealing with darklings here?
We shouldn't be talking about this here. We'll be right back. Jarek's watched them. He is big and friendly, so don't be scared. No one hurts you while we are here.
Tom had to agree with that assessment. Probably better to leave them be alone for a bit, rather than rub their noses in this. The three of them walked by the water's edge for a bit, until they were confident in him being out of earshot. Well, except for Jarek's.
They took the bodies, Tom. There must be darklings among them,
Zarko started.
That door was no darkling, though.
Do they need to sleep?
Yes, just like we do. They are essentially us, you know.
She sounded ashamed of that. It was just what Tom wanted to hear, though. Excellent. Can they see in the dark better than you can? That took her a second to respond to.
Don't think so. I think I would have heard of that if they could.
Very good. I say we go to Deriva. You drop me off, then you get some rest. I have some fun with them in the night.
You want to go in there alone?
Jackalope questioned, clearly not happy with that idea. You people can't hide at night. You're white and there'll be moonlight. I can.
Tom, that is a stupid idea,
Zarko agreed.
And we would lose the element of surprise. If you insist on us trying to help them, then I say we dive in, take some shots of them and climb out. With luck, some of them will follow us and we can draw them off.
Tom had to think on that for a second. Can you hear them in the dark, though?
Whatever broke down that door and did in Celestine cannot be a small target. If we can handle that, the keep might have a chance, or at least hold out for long enough to get help.
Think Jarrus can outrun whatever it is they have?
He might be brash, but he's fast. It's not without reason he flies without a combat crew.
What if we do both? Tom then asked, looking at the two women. At night, they won't see you until you're right on top of them. Then, when I start blowing shit up, you dive on the bastards. Then I slip away in the confusion.
Tom, Deriva lies on the edge of a canyon. There is not much to hide behind, and you can only come from one side, Jackalope protested.
That would be a problem. With his cloak, though, he should be fine so long as he could maintain a decent range. Do they have sniffer dogs or anything like that? The two of them just looked at him confusedly, clearly not having a clue what he was talking about. Something that can find me using smell.
A Vargroth can do that, I'm fairly sure, Jackalope replied, clearly thoughtful on the subject.
Tom guessed it made sense if you hunted from the air, that you wouldn't use smell much. From his understanding, though, the Vargroths were more like hyenas. They wouldn't pass up a carcass, so it made sense they could find it. Zarko, will they be organized enough to search for me, or do I just have to not be seen?
Depends on who's giving them orders. With beasts like whatever broke down the door present, I say there's a very good chance they have someone telling them what to do.
So it's just one dude telling them what to do?
Maybe. There is no saying if there is more than one. Not to mention they took the bodies from Heistal. They must have something with them which can corrupt. A regular Darkling can't do that.
Another Dark Knight, then?
Quite possibly.
Then I say, this just turned into an assassination mission.